And I will introduce you, and then the only scripted thing, I'll guide us through the whole thing. The only scripted thing is our audience loves to hear, and I'll ask you this question in the very beginning. What's your personal fundamental ingredient or mantra towards disruptive innovation? What's driven you throughout your whole life that's made you want to be this pioneer? Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And surprise me. Okay,
Yeah.
good. All
That'd be
right,
a
cool.
surprise.
Okay, great. All right, here we go. Welcome back, everybody, to Disruption Interruption. I'm your host, KJ, and we're here today to talk to another industry leader that has steered off the lame, tired path of the status quo. The US housing crisis isn't just a supply problem, it's a systems problem. While policymakers debate and big builders hit their limits, millions of Americans are being priced out of home ownership with no scalable solution in sight. But today's guest is taking a different approach, one that bypasses bureaucratic bottlenecks and targets the heart of the problem: land. With a background spanning corporate law, fintech, insurance, and the Canadian wine industry, yes, really, she's now leveraging private equity to partner directly with land developers and get finished lots into the hands of builders faster, unlocking housing at scale the market desperately needs. She's a multi-time founder, a bold investor, and a fierce believer that disruption is about doing what others won't. Please welcome Alice Chen, partner and U.S. lead at Pender Hastings Capital. Yay.
Yay. Thank you for having me, KJ. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much. So, Alice, I love talking about this because housing today, especially new home ownership, is so pivotal to our economy and so many other industries, right? It's an index that just really impacts so many of our communities, industries, and so forth. But before we get to this, I want to know, and our listeners always want to know, for you, your personal fundamental ingredient towards disruptive innovation, what is that for you?
It's interesting because I'm, actually working on a TEDx talk on this exact topic. So I was kind of
Nice.
surprised
Let's
you
practice.
asked that. Yeah. So it really stems from the fact that every time I try to venture into a new area, and as you read, my background, I am someone that has a wide variety of interests. So I have been a cross industry founder many times. But every time I have this, kind of ignited passion and want to go into something, I realize I usually lack something. So I usually don't have the experience, don't have the connections, don't have the pedigrees. There's always some sort of lack. So when you have a lack, that forces you to think from first principles of how to look at the problem in a new way, right? So sometimes it's a matter of I just simply don't know what I don't know. And so I'm not confined by the established ways of thinking about a problem. And that frees me to think about the problem from a completely different way. And I would say that's the same kind of first level or first principle thinking that's been applied by a lot of successful big companies. A lot of them are tech companies. But for myself, it's literally just that every time I want to start something, I'm lacking something. And so I am forced to actually create new solutions and new paradigms to solve the same problem.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I absolutely love that because it is the mother of, ingenuity. It's
Yes.
raising your necessity level, right?
Yeah.
It's forcing you to be resourceful when, if everything was laid out for you and you didn't have this lack, you might not even
No,
think
I
differently.
wouldn't need to innovate. I
Right,
would just plug myself into, what's already running, right, as a framework.
right, right. And ever since COVID, and we've seen this with hundreds of innovators that we have interviewed and worked with, there's this catalyst. People have become really tired of the status quo. And it was a great segue into this, right? There would be no reason to change the establishment or what was happening, right? For you with homeownership, let's just break this down for our listeners, right? What are the factors that are happening today that have been happening that requires a big change like you're doing?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. So there's actually a 4.8 million deficit in single family homes in America. Yes, that's a huge number. So
Can
why
can you
such a
when you say that a 4.8 million in single family homes,
yes.
right? Like when we say it's a deficit, right? Um, like give me a perspective of that.
Yeah, so okay, so home building. Let's look at home building. So a company that I like to talk about, I often talk about is D.R. Horton. So D.R. Horton is America's home builder. That's their slogan. Number one home builder in the country. Warren Buffett is a backer of it. It's a $35 billion annual revenue company. So, of course, huge market cap too. But even at that scale, guess how many homes they typically build in a year?
I have no idea. I don't even think I could guess.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, for me, if I think, wow, $35 billion
Yeah.
annual revenue, they should be able to build a million, maybe, a million
Yeah.
two should be pretty reasonable, right? You would think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, they only build about 90,000 homes a year. Exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Well, so yeah, so I'll go into that. So to give
Okay.
more
I
perspective
told
on
you I asked lots of questions.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I love them. Yeah. So to give you more of a perspective on this housing shortage. So D.R. Horton, number one home builder, builds up to 90,000 homes a year. Second place, Lennar, also a public company. They build
Yeah.
about 70,000. Third place, Toll Brothers. They are now down to 50,000. So I have a list of the top 50 home builders in America. Half of them would be public, right? So it would take all of them building at max capacity about 10 years to fulfill this 4.8 million deficit in the housing crisis. And that's just the static number today. It's still growing.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a static number. I mean, it's not like things are going to stay the same. Okay, so it would take 10 years if they
It
were
would take 10
operating at
years
full
to just
capacity.
Exactly, to just meet that number. And that number was pent up from the 2010 financial crisis, right? So I remember,
Mm,
working in a law firm as a junior lawyer when the financial crisis hit, right? So that was an economic cycle that basically pushed the home builders in the country to enter into a pattern of persistent underbuilding. And so I would say we're actually still in that pattern and we haven't come out. And yet there's more demand, right? Beyond the 4.8 million. And when you think about new homes, like who needs new homes? It's not just new families. So sometimes people would say, well, it seems like, the number of people getting married is lower or, this and that. But there's also people getting divorced, right? So splitting of households. There's also
yeah,
the changing demographics, the aging population, there's different permutations of why people would need to have a home, and not everyone wants to live in a multifamily apartment, right? So a
right.
lot of times when they're looking for single family homes, they are now, met with this challenge of affordability, right? So everything is very
Yeah,
expensive.
we don't have enough supply.
We don't have enough supply. You know, so the companies like D.R. Horton, the Lennars of the world, they're still actually very bullish on home building because people need homes. And they may
Yeah,
be adjusting their expectations for the year for the time being, just because we just went through a lot of, headlines and, talks of tariffs and this and that. And so that kind of sent the economy into a bit of a spin in the last couple quarters, and we may continue to be in a bit of a fluctuating state, for the rest of the year. But most of the home builders that are operating partners, the land developers talk to on a day-to-day basis, everyone's super bullish. They may be adjusting their margin expectations for the year. They may be adjusting the product types. Like a lot of them, instead of building a $450,000 starter home, they're building a 250,000 starter home, right? So they're
which
accommodating.
I think is great.
Yes, it's great. Yeah.
I
So
think, especially with the supply and demand issue driving all the prices up, I think that's great for,
exactly. Yeah. So
yeah.
maybe, we don't need homes that have three, four bedrooms. Maybe we just need homes with two bedrooms, right? So maybe a lot of families, younger families, they are having children still, but maybe they're having one child, right? So there's definitely some demographic shifts reflecting the changes in the product types put out by
Hmm.
these home builders. So there's,
Yeah.
a very interesting mix of different things happening.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And could you tell us a little bit more? Like you said, these home builders, after the 2010 financial crisis, right? They've been forced into this persistent underbuilding, right? What are some of the factors that have caused that, that is still going on today? We're in like 15 years later, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at the situation today, right? So, how many people you personally know are actually buying and selling their houses? Probably not too many. Well, why? Because maybe they have a mortgage rate that's fairly favorable that they, locked in. So they don't want to give that up, right? Or maybe they could be losing jobs to the new ways of, the companies like to AI, to automation. Um, could be just people feeling uncertain about the market.
Hmm.
There's a number of reasons. And so there's a lot of reasons. There's also, like I think in the last economic cycle, just because everything just kind of the financial markets crash. And so builders, home builders are businesses too. So then they, instead of continuing to build at, the momentum that they had, they started to slow down. And so they just haven't come out of that hole yet. And then now
Right,
it's like we're entering another, maybe another hole. So yeah, but
right.
if I think for anyone that's considering home building or land development as part of the value chain in terms of getting to the home building as a and objective, the fundamental problem you want to think about is, okay, do I believe that people need homes? Yes. Okay, then do I believe that when people need homes, homes need to be built and lots need to be finished for the home builders to build homes, right? So think again, thinking from first principles to understand the logic behind the investment.
Yes, yes. And thank you for connecting the dots for me on that. It gives it this a much bigger picture. And when we talk about this $48 million deficit, and I want to get into the land part that's so interesting, but this deficit, what does it cause as far as the trickle down effect, right? We have, homes, bring in property taxes. That affects certain communities. It affects the infrastructure. It affects what the cities are going to do. It affects people that buy homes. It affects car loans, right? Home improvement.
Yes.
There's so many industries. Like, what are you finding that's happening just around this whole $48 million deficit?
Yeah, it's 4.8 million. Not,
4.8 million. Okay,
yeah,
great. Thank you.
48, I think. Yeah, 48
48
million
million
would
would
be
be, yes, okay.
a whole
Yeah.
new universe of troubles.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that
but
would be
4.8
bad.
is still a huge number.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, I think the younger families are looking to actually have their own single family detached homes, right? So they are looking to have that entry level home that's affordable, right? So affordability is definitely a factor. Um, we're finding that they need help in terms of, okay, their community needs to have childcare or it needs to have schools, right? So even if the parents are maybe, you know, one of the parents is working from home, there's just a lot of these like post COVID, we're now in 2025 lifestyle demands that's driving the supply and demand of home building as well, or home buying.
So many things. It's like this maelstrom, right?
Yes.
And so, how did you get onto this particular path? And what was lacking? And what did you have to figure out? And where did you come up with this epiphany?
Yes. Um, so it's interesting because I actually came from, a background of private equity investing. So both personally, and I've run fund of funds in Canada as well. So during COVID, I was actually in startup land. So I was running two startups, one in fintech and one in CPG in the alcohol space and tequila space, actually. So very interesting. But I had wanted to go back into private equity because I just really enjoy investing. I love uncovering different pockets of opportunities for investment. And so towards the end of, I would say, 2023, I reunited with an old mentor of mine, James, who's now my business partner in the fund. So he and I are both general partners in our fund. And so I met James 12 years ago when I had my first business exit and I had amassed some personal capital to invest. And so he was just starting his first fund in private equity. So I became an early investor and said, hey, teach me everything I can learn about it, right? So he gave me a platform. I fundraised for his fund. I invest my own money. I got to look under the hood as to what a private equity firm actually does, and at
Hmm.
that time we were buying businesses. So
Right.
buying, boring gadget factory that pumps out a really high quality, you know, earning stream, like for example. So yeah, so that's the type of stuff we were doing. So um, in the last couple of years, I had wanted to turn my attention to real estate. And then so when James and I reconnected, we wanted to set up a new fund, but this time pointing our skill set towards real estate. So then the next question is, okay, real estate is typically hyper local. So what makes sense for one market doesn't necessarily translate into another. Sometimes you'll find
Exactly.
markets that, yeah, that have, kind of parallel stuff going on. So for example, in our home market of Vancouver, BC, we only invest in multiplex developments. So multiplex development, that's a Canadian term. In California, we call it ADU development.
Yep.
Um, Basically, it's turning single family home lot, one house, smaller house typically because it's built from 50 years ago, into a sixplex. So it's about
Hmm.
helping urban metro areas increase density without requiring more land. So we
Right.
find parallel situations in Seattle, in the Bay Area, in San Jose, in San Diego. So but in terms of a strategy, you want to just really look at, okay, what makes sense for that specific market. So for the US, we wanted to look for a strategy that's wider than just one city, that's kind of wider in scope, and a problem that's big enough that we can be solving that problem for a good 10 years. And yet it's not so big that we're all of a sudden competing with the top firms like Blackstone and BlackRock and Vanguard, in which case we don't have a chance of competing
Right.
with these like huge.
It's very Sun Tzu of you to take a look at that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's an exercise of finding that sweet spot. So big enough and yet not too big, right? So local and yet scalable across different states. And so we looked at different things. And one good thing about us is that we take the time to really study strategy. So in 2024, the entire year, we were exploring different strategies under the sun. And as real estate, you can make money in real estate so many ways. You can do it actively, you can do it passively. There's so many different asset categories. Um, just you name it, there's someone doing something interesting. So for
Yeah.
us, it was a bit of a luck because I went to a conference, I would say spring of last year, and bump into a land developer. So at that time, we were actually studying, BTR, build for rent,
Yeah.
and home building in a scalable way in Florida specifically, right? So scalable home building, but I went to this conference. I met our first operating partner. We still, work with them very closely. And so this guy is a land developer. And at first, I'm kind of like, okay, land developer. Okay, well, I don't really know what that means, right? Because as a lay person, it's not something you would hear about. Like, no one
Right.
at a cocktail party would be talking about land development unless, you happen to bump into someone that does that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, so I was sufficiently intrigued. And so I learned later that land development is two parts. It's land entitlements as well as horizontal developments. So entitlements is, going to the city or the county's office, doing the paperwork stuff to make a piece of land buildable, right? So
Okay.
paper lots. And when you do that, you turn something that's raw and presumably, kind of much lower in value into something that's quite valuable without
Right.
actually involving a shovel, right? So it's just all paperwork. But I'm very comfortable with paperwork because my background is in law. So
Right.
I'm used to pushing paper, for a living.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
what was the other one? So it was land entitlement. And what was the other one
Yeah.
that?
What they call horizontal development.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's think about it. So why is a horizontal development? I thought to myself, well, when you're building houses or apartment buildings, you're going up, right? You're going vertically. So that's a
Exactly.
vertical development. So
Yeah.
horizontal means you're building roads, you're building infrastructure. So you're building this way horizontally. You're not building vertically. You're going,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the second part. So once you have entitled land, then you can start to put roads and, water
Of
and sewage
course.
and this and that onto the land, and that's horizontal development. So, in getting to know these land developers, we then learn the model of this business. And I couldn't believe it when I learned it, because how it works is that a DR Horton would approach, let's say, a horizontal developer and say, hey, we got this entitled piece of land. We want to build 1,000 houses on it, but we don't want to do the horizontal development. You guys are horizontal
Mm,
developers. Can you deliver 1,000 lots to us, right? So buy the land from us at, call it $30,000 a lot, right?
mhm,
And then once you're done your job, 2 years later, we'll buy it back from you at $70,000 per lot.
mm.
So they tell you, I mean, it's a negotiation, but you will know how much profit you're going to make, right, by doing your job. And this exit contract, it's called forward purchase contract, is actually signed, inked at the beginning of the project.
And it's
So you
called
have a
forward
signed
purchase
exit.
contracts.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I've been a founder, serial founder across different industries for 16 years. I have not seen a deal. I have not seen a type of business where the exit is actually built in from day one.
Mhm.
Not only is it built in, it's actually a contract. So I've never seen that. And so as we dug into this thesis, we just thought, wow, this is real estate's best kept secret. Like nobody is doing this, and certainly no one has formed a fund based on this thesis. So
No one has.
no one has. Yes,
You're
no one.
kidding me. Even with DR Horton and Lennar and
Yeah, so those would be the end clients, like
right.
they're the customers, but no capital parties. Like there's definitely land banking funds,
Yeah.
but a fund that specifically invests in the investor equity required for undertaking such a land development project, no one has formed it into a fund. So we are the
Wow.
first one. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so talk about, you know, yeah, being innovative and applying first principles to solve this big problem.
Yeah. And so what is that, what is that? Tell me about that. Like, tell me what, like, how you guys have done this. Like, what are your opportunities here? What are your biggest challenges as you're doing this?
Yes, yeah. So I find that typically it's two things. So it's a double-edged sword. So when you're doing something innovative, it takes a little bit longer for people to catch on, because
Yep.
people either will say, "Well, that sounds too good to be true," especially when we say, "Well, we're offering a targeted IRR of 25 to 27%. It's a
Right.
3-year fund. Your money will exit in 3 years. You're going to get 1.75 times your
And they
money."
don't believe it. It's too good
They
to
don't
be
believe
true.
it because they're used to shitty returns.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't
Or they
blame them.
try to compare it to something that they already know, which is not
Right.
what it is at all,
Right,
right?
but then there's nothing to compare to, right? So it's a little bit like back then when iPhone first came out, like you got nothing to really compare it to, not even a BlackBerry. So but it was so expensive. So then it takes some time for people to catch on to a brand new thesis. So I would say the headwind is that it's innovative, so people don't know about it. It takes a lot of education. I talk about this business model and talk about the housing problem often.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of repetitive information. So I think that's a challenge. But at the same time, because it's innovative, we have an opportunity to differentiate ourselves, right, from yet another, I don't know, multifamily syndication, right?
Hmm.
Value add multifamily. So yeah, so it's always like that.
It's a really, thank you for that. And I know a lot of our listeners who are doing disruptive and innovative things have a lot of reality with this, right?
Yeah.
It does take longer. It's a big education curve. So how are you positioning Pender Hastings Capital? Like, what's your elevator pitch so that the real estate in someone's mind is they understand it compared to something else or against something else or anything?
Yeah, so well, as a firm, we have different real estate funds, focus funds. So, like I said, in Canada, our funds are multiplex development funds. So, you're
Mm.
investing in turning single family homes into multiplex. So, in the US, we have a land development focus fund where we're the capital partners that work with best in class land operators or land developers in the country who turn raw land into finished lots for national home builders. And that is not a business that you or I or Joe or Jane will be able to get into. Like no one just one day become a land developer without years of leading into it, right? So
Right.
it's a very lucrative space. It's a very tight-knit circle. Not too many players in the country are in this style of pure land or pure play land development. It's highly profitable. So if you want to get in on benefiting from such a business, because you can't execute it yourself, then you join a fund that participates as an investor into these projects. So that's,
Wow.
yeah, that's
I
what,
love this. It's like you're democratizing this for so many
yes.
people. Do you think that there's been a pent-up demand for this type of investment, or people are just have been so clueless about it that it hasn't really been pent up, even though you are democratizing it?
Clueless. Yeah. Just people.
Okay.
It's not so much that people are clueless. People just don't know. Like they
Yeah.
haven't been made aware. Like they haven't had the opportunity to know. And had I not actually gone to that specific conference where we met our first operating partner, I would be clueless too.
Yes, exactly. Um, so who are the early adopters of this that recognize this? They don't think it's like too good to be true. They see the opportunity. Like, paint me a picture of
Yeah. I
those
mean,
types of people.
it sounds like your listeners would be a great fit because a lot of them are technology industry people. And so they're not scared of new ideas and giving it a try, and so we're not traditional real estate where traditional real estate would be very conservative, right? So buy apartments, rent them out, collect rent, or buy a bunch of Airbnbs, rent them out, collect rent. Like I think there's a certain type of personality that feels very drawn to traditional real estate, but we're not that. We're more private equity that happens to be in land development. Land development is just the representation of a very big problem we want to solve. It happens to be in real estate because real estate is increasingly a bigger and bigger problem, but we're not traditional real estate. So we're great for, technology leaning people or people that have that kind of technology and design thinking that want to explore something that straddles real estate, but at the same time, a very sound business idea for private equity industry.
Yeah, I absolutely love that you're doing this. I absolutely love that you just spontaneously met this person and was interested in what they had to say, and you saw what was lacking. I mean, just out of the hundreds of campaigns that we've done, and a good portion of them in real estate or construction and development, and knowing how important this is, people think everything's already been done in this industry.
Yes.
No, I know,
And
I
then, I
know.
mean, yeah, and then it took us 2 years. Like we spent 2 years looking at everything under the sun and then found this and then decided that, okay, this is where we're going to put our stake in the ground.
That's fantastic. So what do you do in your copious free time? Do you have any do you have any crazy passions or hobbies, or
Yeah,
what do you
I'm a huge traveler, so I like going to pretty exotic destinations. And every year I get called by these different places. And I find that breaking out from my day-to-day routine gives me a lot of inspirations and different ways of thinking about the world, thinking about business, thinking about investing. So, last year I went to Machu Picchu, hiked the last 6 hours of the Incan Trail. This year I'm going to Finland. I'm going to a sauna oriented retreat, wellness retreat, where it's just like every day the focus is on saunaing, you know?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I've never been to Scandinavian countries except Iceland, so I'm very much looking forward to it. Yeah, and then next year I think I might be going to Tibet and doing the Mount Kailash Kora, like circling Mount Kailash as a
Oh,
pilgrimage.
that'd be good. That
Yeah,
will be good. Well, I am with you on Machu Picchu and the Inca Trail. I've done that. I want to do Kilimanjaro next.
nice.
Yes, but how did you like that? They have, what I loved about that is they had bugs with their own zip code. I mean, it was just, I don't know how long your Inca Trail lasted. Ours lasted a little over a
Yeah.
week, but Yeah, it was quite
Yeah,
an
yeah. So I
experience.
was actually so I practice yoga as well. So that's another thing I do in my free time. And so I was there with a yoga group and we did 6 hours. So we only hiked the last 6 hours of Incan Trail to the Sun Gate.
Oh,
But it was
yeah,
such a great vantage point to see Machu Picchu. I was floored. When I saw that, I was just like, how were they able to gain the perspective of how that area could be built into what we now know as Machu Picchu? Like before it was built,
totally.
like someone or some groups of people had like insane visions about what that could be, right? So I was very much in awe of that.
So very true. So very true. Okay, Alice, tell people how to get a hold of you.
If you would like to connect, I'm at alicechencompanies.com. That's my personal website. So you'll find my LinkedIn, you'll find my YouTube, you'll find everything to get a hold of me. So Alice Chen, Chen, companies, plural.com.
Great. And then the website for Pender Hastings Capital?
It's phcfunds.com. So Pender Hastings Capital Funds.com.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you very much for this. And thank you for what you're doing. I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. No joke. I really hope that you're successful in this. I have no doubt you will be. Before we end off today, what is food for thought you would want to leave our listeners with?
I'll say what I said in the beginning. So if you're someone that has a great idea and you want to venture into a new mission, so whether it's a business or maybe you're building a product or maybe it's just a project, right? And you don't know how to do it, or you feel like you don't have something, you're lacking something, you have some sort of disadvantage. I encourage you to flip your frame and think about how maybe if you don't fit into some type of existing paradigm, you're most likely meant to create a new one.
Okay, that was a mic drop moment. Thank you very much for that. That's a wrap, everyone. If you learned something today, I know you did. Go tell someone about this podcast. Tell people to go innovate their markets with a tidbit from this show. And thank you for listening to Disruption Interruption, where we transform lives, we change consumer behavior, we alter economics, and we never accept the status quo. Ciao for now.